Okay, so you are here to witness the 2022 Hyundai Sonata. This is the limited, fully loaded model with the 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. More on that in a little bit. But first, some context for you. I've already done a review on the 2020 hybrid model. So if you want to see a link to that, it'll be in the description box below. But first, let's talk about the 2022 model year and also the exterior of this car. Certainly potent, but okay, for 2022, not a whole lot of changes because all the major changes kind of happened in 2021, I suppose. And obviously, 2020 was the first model year of this generation. Some people like to call this the catfish or whatever. It's a very striking design, in my opinion. It gets a lot of looks and stares. It looks like nothing else out on the road. Many people used to complain that Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, they would just copy off of the German cars, right? Well, nobody can say that anymore. But you let me know your thoughts in the comment section, how you like the way that this vehicle looks. But for 2022, you just get a black package, a night package, if you will, for the N-Line. And I do not recommend going with the N-Line products with any of these Hyundais. I think it's totally missing the point, and they're just not a polished enough of a driving experience for you to step up to those vehicles. The money that they charge for those cars, for the way they drive it, it's just not worth it, for right now anyway. But like you see here, this limited goes for around $34,000, $35,000, which seems like a lot of money, and of course it is, but that's a fully loaded model. In my opinion, I think going with perhaps the SEL with like the convenience package for around 28 grand, that's pretty good value for most families. But what you have to keep in mind is you no longer get this 1.6 liter 4-cylinder turbo. You actually get a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter turbocharged engine. So let's go ahead and let's transition into this driving segment now. Okay, the thing with the 2.5 liter is I haven't driven it, so I can't really tell you what it's like. I've only driven the hybrid. But for this 1.6 liter, it produces 180 horsepower, 195 pounds-feet of torque. For the 2.5 liter, it's almost reversed. It now makes 191 horsepower and 181 pounds-feet of torque. Because it's naturally aspirated, kind of builds its power and makes the power on the top end, right? Versus this, which just gives you all the thrust down low. But it is very quick, this engine. This is the engine I kind of want. And the cheapest model where you can get this engine is the SEL Plus, which is 32 grand. So you just pay 2 grand more, you got yourself the limited. And the other thing I don't like about the SEL Plus is that it comes with 19-inch wheels, whereas this limited comes with 18s. Very bizarre. I really hate the way they do that because these 18s look amazing and they also ride great as well. When you go with the regular SEL, with the regular 4-cylinder, the 2.5 liter, you get 17-inch wheels, which should ride like butter because this already has a sublime ride quality. Even over really bad jittery bumps, this actually does a really good job coping. So you can imagine it'll be even better with the 17-inch wheels. But the other thing to consider is like a blue trim Sonata hybrid because of the way the gas prices are now. And I love driving the hybrid. It just wasn't super refined because they put like the 6-speed automatic in there, not a CVT. Hyundai Kia makes a phenomenal CVT transmission, but they didn't utilize it in a freaking hybrid, so very strange. Now I'm going to show you another thing. This is probably the biggest problem with this car, and that is when you have the wheel cocked and you floor it, makes you look like an idiot every single time. That's the biggest problem with these kind of turbocharged Hyundai Kia products. They cannot put their power down at all. This vehicle, because it's limited with the 18-inch wheels, we have 235 wide tires in all 4 corners. It's like these Pirelli P0 tires. When you step down to the SEL with the 2.5 liter, now you get 215 wide tires with those 17-inch wheels. When you floor it, when you're already up and moving, it's fine. It stays neutral. It has good stability at higher speeds. I'm really impressed with that. It's just when you're turning the vehicle aggressively, making left-hand turns over an intersection, and you really kind of punch it to get that power, it just overwhelms the front end. And when you're pushing this car, when you're really driving it hard, obviously it has this tendency to understeer, of course. It kind of plows through corners. That's just the typical tendency of a front-wheel drive car, and that's fine. Okay, I can accept that. But making a casual right-hand turn like what I did there and being liberal with that throttle pedal, that's an everyday maneuver. You're going to be doing that almost every day, and it just makes you look silly. The solution to that is putting a limited slip diff, which they will never do in this class of vehicle. Even the N-Line models don't receive limited slip differentials, and the N-Line version produces 290 horsepower and 311 pounds-feet of torque. Everybody's like, oh, it's so fast and this and that. Well, it's going to drive all jacked up. That's the issue with that car. You can barely put down 180 horses, let alone like 300. So that's just going to be a disaster to drive, and that's not where Hyundai Kia excels at. I really tried my best to stay away from their performance models. They truly excel doing this. The daily drivers, the regular cars. This is so well executed. Outside of that stupid, if you want to call it torque steering, you can call it that. Outside from that little issue, there's really no other cons driving this. As I already mentioned, this thing is wicked quick for what it is. It just effortlessly kicks down and moves. I like the 8-speed transmission that they use. That's not a problem. There's a bit of a delay, but for the most part, for the type of vehicle that this is and the class of vehicle, I'm totally fine with the 8-speed automatic. You actually have some amazing metal paddle shifters. I like how it's the normal cars that receives the best paddle shifters, and when you step up to the Audis and BMWs, they give you a plastic paddle shifter. Very bizarre, but yeah, you can play with these, and it does a decent job. They're definitely useful. I personally like to drive this car in the smart mode, so that way you get the best of both worlds of reactive performance-esque driving and also the comfort aspect, maintaining a low RPM for cruising. I really appreciate that. Outside of that torque steer, I like the way this handles for everyday normal driving. I think it has a balanced, kind of a neutral demeanor to it. It kind of almost like pivots around corners. It has a fun demeanor to it. Okay, so many people, they ask me like, how does it compare to like a Mazda or a Honda product? I mean, in all fairness, I guess those are superior products, but there's something really enjoyable about driving this car that if you drove it, I think you'll understand. So you have to be very subtle with that throttle pedal here. So yeah, one thing you could do is put really sticky tires, maybe the stickiest all-season tire possible. Continental Extreme Contacts or Michelin Pilot 4, I think that's probably your stickiest all-season tire that you can possibly put on a regular car. That's something to consider. And maybe getting the regular naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It won't be as eager or quick to build the power. You have to really step on it to build the power, so it won't be as instantaneous as its 1.6 liter, but it's the instantaneous power that makes this car fun and quick, right, on an everyday basis. Anyway, everyday handling is okay. I like the chassis balance on this. This actually has potential to being a decent performance driving car, but they usually screw it up. I did not enjoy myself in the Elantra N-Line. That was not a good driving experience for me. The ride quality was weird, and it also didn't do a good job putting down its power. Other things to note, this vehicle does utilize double pane glass, and around town it is extremely quiet. As I already mentioned, the high-speed stability of this is really good. Sure, the power does tend to dip out when you start to reach like triple-digit speeds, which is totally understandable. For 99% of driving, this is going to be more than enough power. It's going to please most people. And also, at those higher speeds, the wind noise is pretty well contained. It's really not bad. You get some subtle buffeting, but that's appropriate. Now, one critical thing to keep in mind with these Hyundai products is the windshields. Back in 2020, there was some class action lawsuit, Lorenzo Ford versus Hyundai Motor Group or something. He had like a Palisade and the windshield would crack on them constantly. Many people wrote in saying that they had windshield issues and it just prematurely cracked on them. Very dangerous, very annoying. And at the time, I think Hyundai just totally disregarded it. They said that there wasn't an issue with their windshields, allegedly. I don't know. That's apparently what they said. So they kind of wrote those people off. I'm not sure what the verdict was on that class action lawsuit. Maybe you can Google it for yourself, or maybe it just got thrown out of court. I don't know. But I too had windshield issues when I tested my Sonata Hybrid, okay? I had this camera mount for my Sony a7 III, and it was a pretty big mount, but it's the same mount that I've used in the past 100 car reviews, so there's no issues with it, obviously. I mounted it on the Sonata Hybrid windshield, and I went to take it out right after the review. So there's this little tab that you pull to kind of release the air or the gas, whatever you want to call it. And as I was pulling the mount off, not aggressively or anything, just the way I normally do it, the whole windshield just cracked on me. It had like this whole spider web kind of cracking effect all over that little portion of the windshield. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like that before. So I went and taped up that area with like a clear, Scotch tape or whatever. And as I was driving that vehicle down the highway, a little pebble came and just immediately cracked the windshield as well. It's a very fragile windshield that they use in the 2020 model. So be very careful when you're buying a pre-owned or a certified pre-owned Hyundai product of that era. Another thing, even before the windshield and everything cracked on me, when I was just testing the car at higher speeds on the highway, there was a crazy amount of wind noise that would come through. And here's another thing. I think recently Hyundai announced a recall saying that some of their older windshields can detach on them. I can kind of see that because perhaps that 2020 I tested, maybe it wasn't sealed correctly on the edges because there was a ton of wind noise coming through the front of the vehicle. It too had double pane glass on the sides. That's not a problem, but through the front there was a crazy amount of noise coming through. And some people are like, oh, why don't you contact Hyundai directly because you're a journalist? And contact who about what? I've been doing this for 4 years full time as my job or my career, right? This entire business is still an enigma to me. I have zero contacts with anybody in this automotive field. I don't know anybody at any of these manufacturers. They just lend me cars. Like, this is a press loan from Hyundai, so I get their press cards, but they actually have no idea who I am. I email these manufacturers and I get no response back. I do a bunch of Lexus videos on this channel. Lexus and Toyota don't even know who I am. And you're asking to yourself, how is that possible? I don't know. I have no idea how this works. They give me cars, but I never get invited to any of their press events. I don't get any contacts. Nobody responds to my emails. It's the strangest business ever. But you know what? In a weird way, I kind of like that. I actually don't like being too chummy with these manufacturers because, look, I can pretty much say whatever I want about these cars and there's no real consequence, I guess. A lot of other journalists, they really want to maintain that little, relationship with the manufacturer so they can keep getting these cars. I'm in North Carolina. We don't get piss anyway. Our access to cars are so limited, right? So you actually see me driving a lot of these European vehicles I featured on my channel recently. Those are actually cars I paid for with my own money through a car subscription program. Yeah. So that's how I've been able to get cars in my area. And some people are like, oh, why don't you just move? Because it's not possible. That's why. Where do you want me to go? California? I mean, there's no guarantee that I'll even get cars even if I do move to California because these manufacturers don't acknowledge me. They don't even know who I am. So, instead of going to some random area in this country, I'd rather just stay safely where I am and do what I do. Work with what I've got. So, point being, be very careful about the windshields. I think they fixed it for 2021 and 2022 perhaps. I haven't had any issues with the cars I've tested since. Just wanted to put that out there. Enough of that. Let's go ahead and let's talk about this interior space now. Okay, the interior of this new Sonata, or this 2022 Sonata. This is another aspect of this car that I really appreciate. So I love driving it. It's got this petite feeling out on the road. It doesn't weigh too much, only about 3,300 pounds, even in this fully loaded limited trim. The seating position of it is great. You can really see out of this car. And again, even in the hectic kind of downtown areas, congested areas, it doesn't feel like you're piloting a massive vehicle, yet in the inside you have a lot of space in here. But of course, being the Limited, you get the nicer seats and everything, but it's got character, way more character than your freaking Toyotas and the Hondas and everything. You got these automatic headlights, you got a 12.3 inch screen, which also has the Apple CarPlay and the Android Auto. I really do like this screen. It's one of the best in the business, easy to use. Some people say they need to update this. I don't really care. I love how they do the menu structures in here. The clarity of it is decent. It's just simple, and there's no learning curve involved with this Hyundai Kia infotainment setup. The gauge cluster is also clear, legible. It's a completely digital screen for this particular model, and I like it. It's good, shows you a lot of great information. It's easy to go through. Once again, no problem. And obviously, being the fully loaded trim, you get all the safety features. But again, with the SEL package, you will get pretty much all the safety that matters. As standard, you do get the forward collision braking assistance and the lane keep assist, lane departure warning. You get a couple of those features. When you step it up to the SEL for around $25,000, you will get the blind spot monitoring and the rear cross traffic alert. I would also add on the convenience package for an extra $2,200. That'll get you the pano roof, the 12.3 inch screen like you see here, and a couple of other goodies as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you do get the 12 speaker Bose audio system in the SEL version of this car. I'm pretty sure. Definitely worth it though. This Bose audio system, this 12 speaker, does genuinely sound very good. Plenty of bass, plenty of clarity, not a problem. I really like this system. The solidity in this cabin space, also very good. It's got 5,700 miles on it. Not too many creaks and rattles. You have plenty of little cubby spaces here. You have a wireless charging pad, which kind of works, kind of doesn't. When I put my phone on there, I have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. It kind of turns on and off. Kind of stupid. Just very annoying. But I guess you do have it, and it technically does work. You have two USB ports, one for charging, one for, I guess, media use. You have your little 12-volt auxiliary. They use this piano black plastic material in the center here. It's not too much, but it's a good chunk of it, and it does get scratched up, so a lot of people probably won't like that. One thing I do like is the way they've done the gear selecting knob. Is just 4 buttons to select your reverse, your drive, etc. You have your drive mode selection here, which, as I already mentioned, I just like to drive around in the smart mode. I think that's a good balance. That way the car will automatically detect what you want to do and kind of pre-program itself that way. You have a 360 camera here with this Limited model. Nice to have, not necessary. The regular backup camera has the lines that turn with the steering input, so I think that's good enough for most people. And also, because this is the Limited model, you also have that feature where you can move it forward and back with the key fob, which I won't lie, it's a good feature to have. Okay, the HVAC controls, always like the way Kia Hyundai does this. You have the physical buttons, easy to use. You have your little displays here to show you your temperature readouts, your fan speed readouts, your heated and cooled seats, all that done through a separate area from the infotainment. So all the HVAC is not tied to the infotainment. Decent space in the center armrest. You have 2 cup holders here. Even with the books, you actually have a lot of space in the glove box, so that's great to see. The pano sunroof, which I think many people will like, you get that here, but also is optional on the lower trim levels like that SEL I mentioned. Another thing I forgot to mention, between the 2.5 liter and the 1.6 liter engines, fuel economy seems to be around the same. This particular car gets 27 in the city and 37 on the highway. That seems to be pretty close for the 2.5 liter as well, and these are very accurate figures. So it's a very fuel efficient vehicle. If you want to skip the hybrid, you can. Really up to you. Also, this vehicle gets a heated steering wheel as well. You have some buttons on the steering wheel too. I hate how the track selection is reversed. Like, up is, going back, and going down is going forward in tracks. Kind of weird, but enough of that. Let's talk about the rear seats. It's a decent amount of space. I'm 5'11". I have more than enough space to sit back there. The backing of these front seats is hard, so if you're an adult, your shin is kind of going to be digging into that hard plastic, so that could hurt. Because this is the Limited trim, you do get vents in the back, and the seat comfort very good back there. In the front, the seat comfort is good, but it could use more lumbar support. That's the one thing I noticed. But otherwise, headroom, legroom is decent. The trunk space is massive, and you also get a spare tire back there as well. Plus, you can fold down these seats 60/40. For the most part, nice, practical vehicle for a family. It looks so exotic and different from every other car on the road. You do have the Kia K5, that's kind of the twin to this vehicle. I have driven it, and I think it's actually a little bit quieter still compared to this, but keep in mind, I'm driving this on an extremely windy day here in North Carolina. So, I don't know. There's still something about this car where it feels super light on its toes and really kind of balanced to drive. Another really good option in the Hyundai lineup, especially if you're penny pinching, is the Elantra. The Elantra is truly an excellent vehicle. I prefer it to the Kia Forte, actually. That's a really good daily driver. You can get it at a pretty good price. You buy a base model version of that, you could even end up being under $20,000 before taxes and fees. So that's really good value for money right there, and that should be big enough for most people. So I will leave a link to my Elantra review as well. But yeah, really good daily drivers. This is where Hyundai and Kia excel at their regular models, okay? Forget their sporty models with like 300 horsepower. Totally unnecessary, and it's not even going to drive that well either. So don't fall for the hype that these other journalists are throwing out there. You have some journalists, they just scream like Neanderthals, and you know, they just say nice things about everything. Every car is the best, apparently, for them. So just be very careful of that. But yeah, spec one out yourself. I'm sure there's a model in the Hyundai range for you that'll fit your budget. Hopefully this video was valuable. Thanks again for watching. Take care and goodbye.